Many of you have seen the new updates coming to cold email in February. Google has released some news that is seemingly concerning. And today I'm joined with Felipe, my business partner, where we're going to share our years of experience in the cold email space to address how we feel about these changes and what you can do to be prepared. Felipe, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Quite excited to talk about this.
Yeah, absolutely. So to start, Felipe, can you give a quick summary of what these changes are in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. So number one, where we're seeing these changes, this was actually published by Google. So they released a report where they're mentioning the things that will be changing in terms of cold email. In that report, they mentioned three things mainly. Thing number one was that all of your emails that are going to be sending out need to be authenticated. What we mean by that is that whenever you send an email, the signature of that email that goes in the code behind it needs to be the same of the signature that you have in your DNS records on the domain. Now, that is not something that's new at all to cold email. Like we've been inserting SPF, DKIM, DMARC, DNS records, which are these authentication records to our domains for a long time. So that is one of those that doesn't really matter per se, but okay, let's just go through them first. So the second is that you need to add an unsubscribe link to the header of the email, not directly to the header of the copywriting, but the header of the code. It's different. And then the third one is that we need to have a spam rate of less than 0.3%, which that is a tricky one. That is the one that will change cold email the most if it really matters. And that's what we're going to discover in this video.
Before we actually get into these changes, I think one thing that's important to bring up is every year we're seemingly a new cold email change that's going to be scary. Some years more than others. And if you go back to my interview I did with Jeremy, who owns QuickMail, he's been doing cold email since like even way before us, like I think like 2013 or 14. And he mentioned how many times it's changed over the years. And overall, it's just not left. There's too many big companies using cold email to generate tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, but it's just probably not going to go away. It is going to change. And another thing is, if it does get more difficult, there's also positives of less competition because sometimes when something's so easy to get into, it can get hyper saturated. But nonetheless, I know these concerns are, real concerns for people and they're nervous. Maybe they're just starting or maybe they're too reliant on cold email. So Felipe, let's go through each of those changes. And beyond just a brief summary, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Will it matter and what might we need to do? So starting with number one, you want to dive there a little bit more deep?
Yeah, absolutely, we can. And one thing that's important to mention too as a notice is that, and this is data from QuickMail that you mentioned. They mentioned that every year for the past 6 years, they've been tracking this type of data. They've noticed inconsistencies with deliverability, ability to launch in primary inbox during the month of February to March, which is when they're always applying updates. So even though we're going to give our 2 cents right now, it's important to keep in mind that every year there is usually a bit of an instability during that period. Now, in terms of the number one thing that they're enforcing right now, which is that you need to have DNS records properly installed in your domain and in the email so they are authenticated, that is something that doesn't really change the game, something we've been doing for the longest time. So I don't think it affects anything at all. Even if there were new records for you to add, you simply add them. There is no barrier for you to do that. So I don't think that affects at all with what's going to happen in 2024.
Great. And that's just a general deliverability practice as well. So if nothing else, it's going to make your campaigns do better. So that's great. So we don't need to worry about that. How about number two?
So number two is even better than number one because this doesn't matter like even more. So in this one, we need to add an unsubscribe link, which is a link for someone to opt out of your emails in the header of the code of the email. So what this does is it allows, let's say, Apple or Microsoft, whoever is checking these emails when they come through, to create a banner saying, if you want to unsubscribe from the sequence, click here. So that is what it is allowing to do. And that is not a problem at all. We can easily add this link. Now, there could be repercussions from like adding this link if it is the same across a lot of email accounts. That gives away that you have a lot of burners, which is not allowed in their policies. But I don't see this affecting things at all. Like if we need to create multiple links and rotate them and custom tracking domains that we use for that, that is not a problem.
One consideration here too is maybe by it being easy to unsubscribe, we're going to get reported less as spam, which might also help in deliverability in its own way. Also, this actual unsubscribe link, is this something that people on an individual level are going to have to worry about, or do you see cold email tools probably adapting to having this automatically when sending?
Oh, they will definitely have it automatic. Yeah, I could definitely see that happening. Another thing to know is like the way the cold email is sent nowadays, when it's done well, is that it doesn't look like it was sent in bulk. So you have a lot of accounts, right? And they all send like very low volume. So it doesn't really feel like you're sending mass. And if you diversify it well with multiple admin panels, like there is no real way for them to find out that you're sending so many emails. So you may not even need to have an unsubscribe link at that point
Yeah,
if
that's
you're
pretty good to
diversified.
know. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, a lot of this is going back to fundamentals, right? Like, do you
yeah.
have multiple domains? Do you have multiple emails? Are all pointing to the same place? Are you sending relevant copy? Like, I think really all of it this is probably going to do is just make sure that you have your fundamentals right, which if you want to learn those, we have great videos on the channel on most of the fundamentals of cold email. And then now the third piece of update you mentioned is maybe the one that people are most concerned about. So can we talk about what that is and what we can do, or should we worry, should we not worry?
Yeah, absolutely. So what it's saying is that we could have a maximum of a 0.3% spam rate. Now, there's two things about that. Number one is who does this apply to? Because they released another article right after because this caused like big confusion in the space. So Google released another update saying that this will only apply to accounts that are sending more than 5,000 emails per day. Now, if you think about it, like most of you will never be sending that amount, or if you are, you're going to be spread into like so many accounts, it may not
Sure.
even matter. Now, I do believe that Google is good enough to figure out how many accounts you have if you're not like separating everything, separating phone numbers, separating like your Whois information and whatnot. But let's keep in mind, let's say we have a few accounts only and we're sending like 5,000 emails per day, or let's say that we'll apply this to accounts that are sending less. Then what it means is that we need to have a lot more warm-up emails going on so that we can compensate for the amount of reports that we're going to receive in the campaigns themselves. So let's say we assume that we're going to get 30% spam rates on our campaigns, which is very high. Happens in e-commerce, doesn't really happen in many other industries, but let's say we have that. In that case, what we need to do is send, let's say, 900 warm-up emails for every 50 emails in the campaign, something along those lines, right? Then we are 100% sure we're not going to go ever above the 0.3% spam rate. So what it would really mean at the end of the day is that we need more accounts and have more rotation in terms of the warm-up sending. So this is something that's very easy to adapt from a cold email sending to perspective and quite easy to implement. It just would add more cost to the
Yeah.
entire thing if it does affect account sending low volume.
One other consideration is, even if there's a 5,000 max per day, most people don't realize how many cold emails that is. I see a lot of people already come into cold email, and the first thing they think is, I'm just going to scale this to the moon. I'm going to reach out to 100,000 people a month. But they haven't even considered that their market isn't that big. I mean, I would bet that 90% of people listening to this don't even have a market that's a proper size that this would even matter to them. Because most people, you really have maybe 10,000 people you're selling to. If you have a really broad market, maybe 50, but you're not going to reach out to them in 1 month. So this probably won't apply. Now, one other question on that spam rate, does that apply? Is that only if in Google? Does it apply to Outlook? Who does that apply to actually?
So in the article that Google released, they said that it would only apply to Google accounts. They did put an addendum, which was that it would only apply to personal accounts that they're reaching out to. So that would really affect email marketing more than cold email. Now, you never know if that's the limit of what they're actually enforcing. It might be that it will translate over to business accounts as well.
So just to clarify here, most people sending cold emails, and probably you listening to this, you really shouldn't be sending to personal accounts. It's just a bad deliverability practice in general. Also, just for legal reasons, we want to make sure we're reaching out to businesses of genuine intent. So if you're doing cold email the right way, this really shouldn't matter. Again, we don't know for sure, but it should not matter. And if it does matter to you because you're reaching out to a bunch of personal emails, well, you probably shouldn't be doing that anyway. So if anything, it's just going to force you into a better practice. So I think at the end of this, the summary is cold email will probably keep working. Nothing's going to burn and break. However, fundamentals will always remain, and you just won't know. And this is why you want to diversify outreach channels. What I don't think you should do, two things, is one, be fully reliant on one channel. That's a terrible way to run your business. Facebook accounts get banned. The way Google ranks pages on SEO changes. Cold email rules change. LinkedIn messages change. You never want to be reliant on one platform. And the second thing is don't sit on the sidelines and wait. As soon as this isn't news, there'll be new news with legal changes or with a software change or with a Google restriction. So waiting on the sidelines is a really dumb idea. You should have 2 or 3 ways you're getting clients. Don't do a million at once, and you should run them. And you should continue to run them and be proactive with changes. And if one goes away, that's fine. But by sitting and waiting until February, you're missing out on January. And January historically is one of the best months for cold email. People have goals, they have new budgets. And if you're going to sit on the sidelines, that's fine. I'll take the money you're leaving on the table, and other people will too. So, Felipe, is there anything else you want to summarize with before we go ahead and end this update video?
Yeah, so I have a few more notes that I think would be quite helpful to the people watching. The
Absolutely.
number one, in terms of deliverability overall, and this is something we're noticing from sending cold email campaigns, is that a lot of these email service providers are catching on to the copywriting that you're sending, right? We all know that sending something that's too explicit or like that like really does trigger users does not go through to the primary inbox, right? It goes to spam. That's a filter. Now, what Google is doing as well is they're looking for specific catchwords and catchphrases in cold emails to see if you're sending bulk unsolicited email, right? So if you pay close attention to your messaging and you make it relevant and you make it personalized and you add extra touches and you remove all of the spam words, you're likely going to be able to keep on sending emails. The framework for that is very simple. If your grandpa were to today create a business email account and send a message to you, would it go through? Very likely, yes. So there's always going to be a way to send it through. And the second note is cold email going away? And the answer to that is like, not really. We have all our lives tied to our emails. Our bank accounts sometimes are connected. All of our social accounts are connected to email. So email is gonna always stay there. And there's always gonna be a way to land in primary inbox. Else business wouldn't work. Like, why would you use email if everything went to spam, right? So not really a huge concern on that sense. The game will change though.
Very good notes. Well, everybody, there you have it. If you have any specific questions, go ahead and drop them down below. And if you want to know how to react to this breaking news before it gets on YouTube, consider checking out Grow B2B. That is Felipe and I's program where we coach people on how to run ridiculously effective cold email campaigns based on our experience doing this for a very long time. Seriously, we're getting old, man. Anyways, thanks for watching. If you subscribe and like, I appreciate it, and I will catch you in the next video.
Thanks so much. See you guys then.